Imagine standing in a muddy Belgian field in June 1815. The rain has just stopped, cannons are rolling into position, and one man, Napoleon Bonaparte, believes he is about to reclaim his empire. By nightfall, that dream lies shattered, and the map of Europe will never look the same again. The Battle of Waterloo was not just the defeat of one general. It was the end of an age, the birth of another, and the pivot point that shaped Europe for a century. Stories like this matter because they show us how a single day, a single decision, can change the course of civilization. Waterloo was one of those days. So let's step back. Why did this one battle matter so much? And how did the clash of thousands of soldiers on a quiet Sunday decide the fate of millions across Europe? For over a decade, Napoleon had dominated the continent. He redrew borders, crowned kings, and spread revolutionary ideas of law and merit across empires that had long been ruled by tradition. But after a disastrous campaign in Russia and a crushing defeat in 1814, he was forced into exile on the island of Elba. The crowned heads of Europe breathed a sigh of relief. The old order, kings, princes, and emperors, could finally restore themselves. But Napoleon was not finished. In March 1815, he escaped Elba, landed in France, and within days rallied an army. Farmers, veterans, and even officers who had once abandoned him flocked back. His comeback was so swift that the period is still called the 100 Days. Europe panicked. Old enemies, Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia, formed the Seventh Coalition. They promised not to rest until Napoleon was destroyed once and for all. And so the stage was set for Waterloo. On June 18, 1815, Napoleon faced off against the Duke of Wellington's Anglo-Allied forces, with the Prussian army under General Blücher racing to join the fight. The morning was brutal. Napoleon's men attacked the fortified farmhouse of Hougoumont, hoping to draw out Wellington's reserves. Instead, the battle there became a death trap, sucking in thousands of French soldiers, but never breaking the British defense. By afternoon, cavalry thundered across the fields, sabers flashing. Imagine the ground shaking beneath 10,000 horses. Yet wave after wave of French charges failed to break Wellington's infantry squares, tight formations of men bristling with bayonets, standing firm against the storm. As the day dragged on, Wellington's army was stretched to the limit. His men were battered, exhausted, their lines fragile. And then, just before evening, the Prussians arrived. They surged onto the battlefield, tipping the balance. Napoleon threw in his last gamble, the Imperial Guard, his undefeated elite. They marched with precision, black bearskin hats towering above the smoke. But for the first time, they broke. Cries of "La Garde recule." "The Guard is retreating," spread panic. The French army dissolved into chaos. Napoleon's dream was finished. But here's the real question. Why did this battle echo far beyond that muddy field? First, it ended Napoleon's rule once and for all. No more exiles with second chances. He was shipped to St. Helena, a remote island in the South Atlantic, where he would live out the rest of his days writing memoirs and dictating his version of history. Second, Waterloo secured a century of relative peace in Europe. After nearly 2 decades of war, the victors reshaped the continent at the Congress of Vienna. They redrew borders, restored monarchies, and created a balance of power designed to prevent another Napoleon from rising. For the most part, it worked. With few exceptions, Europe avoided continent-wide conflict until World War I in 1914. Third, Waterloo marked a turning point in the idea of who held power. Napoleon had spread revolutionary principles, merit over birth, law codes, and secular education. Even in defeat, those ideas couldn't be buried. Monarchs returned, but they ruled countries forever changed. You could argue that the modern Europe we know today, national states, legal systems, and a sense of shared political identity, was born in the fires of Napoleon's wars and sealed at Waterloo. Think about the individuals caught up in this clash. A young soldier from Yorkshire standing in a muddy square, heart pounding as cavalry charges down on him. A French grenadier in the Imperial Guard, once invincible, now realizes the end has come. A Prussian farmer-turned-soldier, exhausted from marching all night, arrived just in time to help turn the tide. Waterloo was not only a battle of generals, it was a battle of ordinary men whose lives intersected in a moment that altered history. And isn't that the essence of history itself? That is what seems like the fate of nations is lived through the fear, courage, and sacrifice of individuals? Why should we care about Waterloo 2 centuries later? Because it shows us the limits of ambition. Napoleon was a genius, but he could not outrun reality forever. It shows us how fragile peace can be. Only a coalition of unlikely allies could stop him. And it shows us how one day, one battle, can redirect the future. So let me ask you, if you had lived in 1815, on which side would you have stood? With the monarchies trying to preserve tradition, or with Napoleon, the revolutionary who promised change but brought endless war? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you're enjoying this story, consider giving it a like. It helps bring more people into these conversations about how the past still shapes our present. The Battle of Waterloo was more than the fall of Napoleon. It was Europe's reset button. The old order returned, but the new ideas he unleashed never disappeared. They would simmer and rise again. In revolutions of 1848, in the unifications of Germany and Italy, and in the struggles that still define modern Europe. If this story gripped you, the next chapter you'll want to watch is about the rise of the British Empire after Waterloo, how Britain went from this victory to becoming the world's superpower. I'll link it right here. And subscribe if you want more forgotten stories from history that textbooks never cover. This episode belongs in our Empires and Power series, so check out the playlist to keep exploring how battles, leaders, and turning points shaped the world we live in today. Because in the end, history isn't just about the past. It's about understanding the forces that still echo into our own lives.